Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon video. So we recently just got an announcement that on October 17th, Bandai is going to be updating the ban and restriction list. And as per usual, I'm going to be giving my predictions on what I think is going to be banned or limited. So as far as their post, they technically made two different posts, one for the English side of things and one for the Japanese side of things. As far as when they're announcing this ban and restriction list update, it's going to take place on October 17th for both versions of the game, but the effective date will change between the different versions. So the English version is going to be effective as of November 17th, where the Japanese side of things is going to be getting it a little bit earlier on October 27th. So just as a couple of disclaimers, just because this is my predictions, my own thoughts and opinions, not every card that I'm going to be showing off is one that I'm actually expecting to get banned or limited. This is, again, just my predictions, thoughts, and opinions based on where the current state of the game is, based on the community feedback. Then on top of that, most bans and limits are actually meant for Japanese format first, so most of these bans and limits are meant to impact Japan, and usually everywhere else just gets them later, as we kind of see with their initial posts. So Bandai does have a precedent on not trying to hit high rarity cards. Bandai also usually has a precedent on their reasons on why they're going to be banning and limiting cards, and the three main ones is going to be for rebalancing, just to make things more fun and more fair. If something's overperforming for too long, that's also something for them to take a look at, just because that means that the deck it might just be a little bit too strong, on top of the fact that their last reasoning that they usually give is to free up some design space, so that way they could make more cards with similar style of effects later down the road to synergize with other cards. One other thing that we have to keep in mind is Bandai also can taper their bans and limits and when they take an effect. We've seen this done multiple times in the English format, so just because something is going to be hit doesn't mean it will take effect immediately. So with that said, before I get into the predictions, what are the current problems with the game? So as far as what I can tell based on the Japanese BT15 data, it looks like purple is just absolutely dominating the metagame. Thanks to EX5 and BT15, most of the top decks are purple between Apocalymon, Anubismon, Metal Garurumon, and Lugamon. So the decks that aren't purple that are doing well are usually really high ceiling decks with some insane combo potential, or just really hard decks to deal with in general, like ShineGreymon, Red-Black Greymon, Mirage Galgamon, Yellow Vaccine, as just a few examples. So while there's still a decent variety of decks that are able to be played, with the recent changes that have been made in the game with the past couple of sets, it makes it harder for decks that are basically not broken to win in some way. But the irony behind this is that Bandai, as of their last ban and restriction update, wanted to try to better balance the game and future-proof the game and limit the amount of OTKs that are in the game as much as they possibly can. But with the new cards that they've been making, they've only been making more OTK strategies, and if they're not OTK strategies, they're other very powerful strategies that are hard to stop and interact with. So with all that out of the way, let's just dive right in and see what my thoughts are in terms of cards they could potentially ban or limit to try to better fix the game. My wild card prediction is going to be Apocalymon from BT15 to just straight up get banned. This card is a really powerful and borderline game warping card, and he has a lot of interactions with a lot of different cards, so instead of just hitting all of the different cards to try to limit his interactions with them, it's easier just to ban the problem rather than ban the cards around the problem that help facilitate him. So because of this card and what he does, cards like Eismon Scatter Mode and Garurumon X Antibody and their draw and discard engines that are usually associated with them work insanely well at being able to set him up super quickly and efficiently, as well as cheap digging tools like Memory Boosts and Analog Boy to be able to make the deck hyper fast and hyper consistent. This kind of forces decks to be faster or adapt to the fact that Apocalymon is going to be a very played and powerful deck, which is further warping the landscape of the game, allowing certain decks to be able to perform, like what we're seeing with purple decks, just because purple doesn't necessarily care about the mill as much because it likes to utilize a lot of its resources from the trash. But this also is limiting the design space when it comes to level 6 Digimon with on-play abilities that they can make, due to him being able to abuse them, especially in any. So now, because of this card's existence, they have to really limit and restrict what they're able to design when it comes to that specific design space. The mill effect is also super hard to fight back against, especially since this card isn't that hard to actually set up because of the engines that he's working with to be able to set himself up. So the ability to just mill a lot of cards out of the opponent's deck not only just takes away the opportunity for them to be able to try to find their outs, but utilize their outs, really forcing them to need to have borderline a perfect hand and a perfect setup and draw into what they need before their deck basically just gets taken away without much thought or effort put behind it. If Apocalymon is also killed, then it's not necessarily removing the resources away from him, so being able to set up and play other Apocalymon is just as easy as that first one that you initially set up. So there's no good way to actually hit this card, unfortunately, which is why I don't necessarily think that they're going to be limiting him at all, just because the position he's in is an all or nothing position because of the cards and the way the deck is focused and centered around him. Him also being a secret rare also really kind of sucks, just because that puts him in a really bad position to want to hit, especially hit early, because that's going to impact the sales of BT15. But because of him being such a problematic card, I think that he still should get banned. But unfortunately, if they're not thinking about actually banning Apocalymon and they're just going to try to slow him down, then I think hitting EX5 Gurumon X Antibody is just one of the better options to try to slow the deck down as much as they possibly can. And if they're not going to be hitting Gurumon X Antibody, then they still need to hit something again to try to slow down Apocalymon, and I think that they could potentially hit Eismon Scatter Mode as a result. Then as far as some of the other major decks that I think could potentially get limited, we're looking at ShineGreymon, unfortunately, just because ShineGreymon still is one of the better decks in Japan, and right now it's the best deck in the English format, and that doesn't look to be changing anytime soon. So Marcus from BT12 is the card that I probably would want to see get limited to really nerf the deck, just because this card is enabling the deck to basically be doing a whole lot. But like Apocalymon, I think that instead of just trying to ban and limit a whole bunch of cards around the problem, sometimes it is easier just to ban the problem itself. And this card is an insanely powerful card on everything that it's doing, allowing ShineGreymon to be super explosive in nature. So not only are tamer cards just hard to interact with and get rid of, but this card is allowing free evolutions, which it can be super broken because it's restricting the design space that they can have with other level 6 Greymon Digimon, just because they could take advantage of what Marcus is offering. Then when it comes to other cards in the ShineGreymon deck, there's just a lot of interactions with tamers and being able to set up your tamers, more specifically Marcus, so the deck has multiple ways to be able to actually just play him and keep him around as best as they possibly can to make him a little bit on the safer side. And with the BT12 Marcus more specifically, he has the built-in ability to be able to turn himself into an extra body, which is cheaper than any hybrid would. And because he does this himself, you don't necessarily need the BT13 Agumon to be able to turn him into a Digimon either to enable his abilities. But if they're not going to want to hit Marcus, then they definitely still need to hit cards around Marcus, just like if they're not going to hit Apocalymon, they're going to have to hit cards around him. And I think that the two most logical cards that they would want to try to limit around the ShineGreymon deck is going to end up being the BT13 GeoGreymon and the BT13 RiseGreymon. So the BT13 GeoGreymon is just another way to be able to play out your Marcuses for free, which is just absolutely insane, because the deck already has a whole bunch of different ways to be able to set up its Marcus, so reducing the consistency on which you have to be able to set up your Marcus is going to still be an impactful limit on what the deck is capable of. but I think that the ShineGreymon from BT13 is probably the smarter hit, just because, again, similar to GeoGreymon, it's another way to be able to play out your Marcus for free. GeoGreymon has a little bit more usability in terms of other decks that it could be played with, which is why I wouldn't want to see GeoGreymon hit over ShineGreymon, especially since ShineGreymon has that consistency of that ability to be able to shove your Marcus into your security when it dies, so that way you actually lose out on that consistency of the ability, making your Marcuses not as safe as they used to be, which again limits how you're going to be approaching the deck and what you're going to want to try to do with the deck, which is why I think ShineGreymon is definitely the pick that I would want to see get limited over GeoGreymon. Then, as just some other cards that I was thinking about could probably get limited, is going to be the 2-cost Searchers. So the 2-cost White Tamer Searchers are just very powerful cards, just because, well, they're some of the cheapest ways certain decks have to be able to dig through their deck, and they have some extra resource generation on the upside for just using them, making them some of the most efficient cards that we currently have. Cool Boy obviously interacts with X antibodies more specifically, but again, we have a whole bunch of X antibody based decks that could definitely take advantage of that searching power. Then when it comes to Analog Youth, with the rise in popularity of purple decks and trying to set up your trash as a sub-theme for various other decks in various other colors, that just makes it Analog Youth a super powerful card to use in combination with them, just because the way he's digging cards is putting the rest into your trash, so it's helping set that up, making him just another super powerful card for a lot of decks to take advantage of. And then as far as some honorable mentions that I could see them doing something about, but realistically isn't going to be happening, I would like Hidden Potential Discovered to get banned. I think that as the game gets more powerful, so does this card getting more powerful, and this creates a really feels bad position where you lose just because the opponent saw Hidden Potential Discovered, where you might not have lost if they didn't have that card otherwise, just because of the sheer amount of tempo this card provides a lot of green decks. Then when it comes to Mervamon, I would like Mervamon to get limited to 1. This card, like the Cerberus engine, just screams like it's going to be a very easy card to want to abuse, just because her package is literally her and Ignitemon in order to make full use of her abilities. So we know that Anubismon already is going to be taking advantage of utilizing this card, just because he's already reducing the play cost of whatever he's playing off of his ability in EX5, and to pair that up with the Digicross means that you could have an even cheaper level 6 Digimon that you could play off of his ability, and Mervamon is going to be creating a really powerful and hard to deal with board state, just because of all of the different Digimon that you're able to spawn with one turn to be able to create a wide and powerful field out of nowhere. Then when it comes to Deathslinger, I also wouldn't mind seeing this card limited to 1, just because of the nature of how milling works in this game. Milling already is supposed to be a more negative side effect, but the way Purple uses it, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's a negative at all, and this card is designed to try to turn that negative into a positive, but because it's already a positive, it's turning it into basically a super positive. So already milling is really powerful for those style of decks, because that's how they're going to be triggering some of their abilities. So to mill is already the cost of the effect to be able to get what ability you're trying to trigger off already. But now that you're adding mill triggers on top of that, and even more mill triggers, this card is going to be limiting the design space in which they actually can start making mill triggers, just because you have, again, similar to BT13 ShineGreymon with BT12 ShineGreymon, that consistency of ability, so that way you're never actually going to be losing when you're going to be milling, which should be the downside or the drawback. It is the fact that you're losing cards out of your deck to do what you need to, and this just makes it not even a downside at all, while also doubling down and being one of the better removal spells that Purple has access to. So that's kind of just my quick and overall thoughts and opinions on cards that I would think would get banned or limited based on the information that I could gather, not only just from the English side of things, but from the Japanese side of things as well. And as we know, Bandai mostly focuses on the Japanese side of things. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.